In the ancient kingdom of Umueze, the sun did not dare rise until Princess Adaeze opened her eyes. That was what Adaeze told everyone. She was a princess with a sharp tongue, and she was just a maid with nothing to lose. One insult, one mistake, one journey into the forest that changed everything. Hi lovely friends, welcome to my channel. Get your popcorns by your side, sit back and journey with me to Umueze. Let's see what happened to Adaeze, the arrogant princess, many years ago. Adaeze was the only child of King Azubike, the king of Umueze. She was a spoiled child and insulted anyone who dared try to correct her. She was as beautiful as a fresh hibiscus, but her mouth was a pepper soup of insults. She was lousy personified. She believed her royal blood made her skin too holy for the sun and her feet too precious for the earth. She didn't just walk, she vibrated with arrogance. She believed the village was her personal footstool and the palace staff were merely shadows that breathed her air. Useless, all of you, Adaeze's voice rang out one morning. She was pointing a trembling finger at a bowl of pap. Is this breakfast or did a cloud fall into a bowl and die? It is too watery. It looks like the tears of a lazy ghost. The maids trembled. They bowed so low their foreheads touching the dust. But in the corner, leaning against a pillar with a broom in her hand, stood Oledo. Oledo was an orphan. Her mother had been the queen's most trusted handmaid before passing away. Because of that bond, the queen treated Oledo like a daughter, even though she worked as a maid. Oledo was wise, respectful, but she had a backbone made of Iroko wood. While other palace maids feared the princess, Oledo was as fearless as a lion. She wasn't the type you can intimidate. Why are you staring at me, you this poor orphan? Adaeze snapped, turning her fire towards Oledo. Is my face a festival we are invited to watch for free? Oledo smiled calmly. No, my princess. I was just wondering how a mouth so beautiful can produce words that smell like a rotten egg. Oledo fired back. The palace went silent. A guard dropped his spear. Adaeze's eyes nearly popped out of her head. What did you say? I said, Oledo replied, dusting a chair, that beauty is a gift, but character is a choice. You are wearing the gift, but you have thrown the choice into the bushes. For the next week, Adaeze made it her life's mission to break Oledo. She gave her impossible tasks. Oledo, wash my wrappers until they shine like the moon, but do not use water, Adaeze commanded with a smirk. Oledo didn't blink. Rather, she said, I will do that, princess, as soon as you catch the wind in a basket and bring it to me to dry them. The guards tried to hide their laughter behind their hands. Adaeze was vibrating with rage. She tried to trip Oledo in the hallway, but Oledo stepped over her foot with the grace of a gazelle. You think you are clever, Adaeze hissed. You are just a maid. My mother loves you because she pities you. You are a cat living in a lion's house. And you, princess, Oledo countered. You are a lion who thinks the world is a cage built just for you. But remember, even the lion must watch where he steps, or the smallest stone will make him lame. One afternoon, Adaeze decided to humiliate Oledo in front of the queen. She hid her favorite coral beads in Oledo's sleeping mat and cried out that she had been robbed. The orphan has sticky fingers, Adaeze wailed, pointing as the queen approached. Search her room. The queen, a woman of deep grace, watched as the guards searched. When they found the beads, Adaeze let out a triumphant laugh. See, she's a thief. Oledo stepped forward, unafraid. My queen, if I were a thief, I would have stolen the princess's tongue, for that is the only thing she possesses that she uses too much. But look closely at the beads. They are covered in the scent of uli, the dye the princess used on her skin this morning. My hands haven't touched uli in months. The queen looked at Adaeze, whose face turned the color of a ripe tomato. Adaeze, the queen said softly, the pit you dig for an innocent person is usually the size of your own grave. Never you try this thing again. You try to set an innocent orphan up? Never repeat it. On Ore market day, the air was thick with the scent of dried fish and the chatter of 1,000 voices. Adaeze moved through the crowd like a shark through a school of minnows. Behind her, a line of 4 maids, including a watchful Oledo, carrying an empty basket. Adaeze stopped at the stall of Mazi Okeke, an elder who carved the finest wooden stools in the village. You there, Adaeze barked, pointing her fan at a beautifully polished stool. How much for this firewood? Mazi Okeke bowed his grey head. Princess, that is Iroko wood. It took me 3 moons to carve the symbols of our ancestors into the legs. It is 5 bags of cowries. Adaeze laughed, a sound like glass breaking. 5 bags? For something my goat could chew through an hour. I'll give you 2 cowries, and you should thank me for taking this trash out of your sight. In fact, Oledo, take it. It will make a good footrest for my cart. Princess, Oledo whispered, her voice firm. An elder's sweat is not water. To underpay a craftsman is to steal his life. Adaeze turned, her eyes flashing. If I wanted a sermon, she said, I will go to the shrine. Pack the stool or I will have the palace guards rename this stall the dust heap. Mazi Okeke handed over the stool with trembling hands. Adaeze didn't even look at him as she walked away, tossing a single cowrie into the dirt for him to crumble after. Later that afternoon, the sun was a golden orange, and the village women were at the riverbank washing clothes and fetching water. It was a place of laughter and songs, until Adaeze arrived. She didn't come to wash, she came to be seen. Move! She commanded a group of young girls who were splashing in the shallows. Your splashing is making the water too loud. I am trying to think royal thoughts. She sat on a flat rock while Oledo knelt nearby to watch the princess's silk wraps. A very old woman, Mama Nkechi, was struggling to lift a heavy clay pot onto her head. Her knees shook like a leaf in the wind. Old woman, Adaeze called out, you are blocking my view of the horizon. Why must you be so slow? If you cannot carry your own water, perhaps you should stay in your hut and wait for the ancestors to call you. The riverbank went silent. To insult the elderly in Umueze was to invite a curse from the earth itself. Oledo stood up, her hands dripping with soapy water. Without a word, she walked over to Mama Nkechi, took the heavy pot, and gracefully helped the old woman steady it. Adaeze, Oledo said, dropping the former princess title for a split second. The sun shines on the old and the young alike. One day, your knees will shake too. Will you want someone to tell you to hurry up and disappear? Adaeze stood up, her face turning to a deep shade of purple. How dare you speak to me of aging? I am eternal. I'm the morning dew. The dew is beautiful, yes, Oledo replied, returning to her washing. But it vanishes the moment the sun gets hot. Real substance stays when the heat comes. Even inside the palace, no one was safe. One evening, the head cook, a large woman called Auntie Foma, had spent all day preparing egusi soup for the king's guests. Adaeze entered the kitchen, picked up a tasting spoon and dipped it into the pot. She spat the soup out onto the clean floor. Salt! It tastes like you gathered water from the great ocean and boiled it. Adaeze screamed. Please start over again. Start over. Auntie Foma looked helpless, ready to cry. Princess, the guests are arriving in an hour. There is no more melon seeds. Then use your brain if you can find it under that your dirty head wrap. Adaeze snapped. She then looked at Oledo, who was grinding peppers nearby. And you, orphan, why aren't you scrubbing the floor where I just spat? Do you think my royal saliva is a decoration for the kitchen? Oledo didn't move. She looked at the wasted soup on the floor, then at the exhausted cook. The princess is right about one thing, Auntie Forma, Oledo said calmly. The soup is ruined, but not because of salt. It is ruined because someone with a bitter heart touched it. Bitter heart make bitter bellies. Adaeze was filled with rage. She moved forward to slap Oledo, but Oledo simply moved a tray of hot peppers into the princess' path. Adaeze missed her step, nearly falling into a basket of charcoal. You will pay for this, Oledo, Adaeze hissed. By the time I'm done with you, you will wish you were just a shadow instead of a maid. I am already a shadow, Adaeze, Oledo replied, her eyes never wavering. But remember, shadows are the only thing that stay with you when the lights go out. The tension in the palace grew as the festival of the new moon approached. This was the most important event in Umueze, a time when the kingdom's wealth and grace were put on display for all the neighboring lands to see. For Adaeze, it was a stage, but for Oledo, it was a mountain of work. The king had commissioned a special ceremonial gown for Adaeze, woven from the finest silk and adorned with thousands of tiny hand-sewn cowrie shells. It was the work of 10 women over 3 months. 2 nights before the festival, Adaeze sat in her chambers, watching Oledo polish her bronze mirrors. Adaeze's eyes fell on the gown, which sat majestically on a wooden frame. Oledo, Adaeze said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I have decided the gown is too plain. It makes me look like a commoner's daughter. I want you to unpick all the white cowries and replace them with red coral beads. And I want it done by sunrise. Oledo looked at the gown. To unpick the shells would ruin the delicate silk threads. It was an impossible task designed to make Oledo fail. Princess, Oledo said, her voice steady. To tear this work is to spit on the fingers of the women who labored for you. The silk will breathe its last breath if I touch it with a needle tonight. Are you disobeying me? Adaeze stood up, her shadow stretching long across the floor. I am the command, and you are the echo. Start unpicking, or I will have you sleeping in the forest with the hyenas tonight. Oledo took a deep breath. She didn't pick up the needle. Instead, she picked up a small hand mirror and held it up to Adaeze. Look, princess, if I change the beads, the dress will be red. Your skin is bronze. Your beads are coral. You will look like a giant chili pepper rolling through the village square. Is that the royal look you desire? Adaeze snatched the mirror, looking at her reflection and then at the dress. She realized Oledo was right. She would look ridiculous, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. Fine, keep the shells, but because you talk back at me, you will sweep the whole palace with your own head tie before the cock crows. My head tie is small, princess, Oledo replied, unbinding her hair, but my patience is long. I will sweep the whole palace, but be careful so you don't fall on your own arrogance. The next morning, the palace was a hive of activity. The queen had invited the wives of the titled chiefs for a private lunch. She had specifically asked Oledo to oversee the preparation of the ofako, knowing the girl had her mother's magical touch with spices. Adaeze, seeing the queen's affection for Oledo, felt a burn of jealousy. While the kitchen staff were busy outside, Adaeze slipped into the kitchen. She saw the pot of rich orange stew smearing on the fire. Let's see how wise you are when the queen's guests are coughing, Adaeze whispered. She reached into a pouch and pulled out a handful of watazi. a leaf so bitter that a single drop could ruin a whole pot. She dumped the entire handful into the pot and stirred it with a wicked grin. She turned to leave, but there, standing in the doorway, was Oledo. She was holding a basket of fresh scent leaves. "The soup is for the guest, princess," Oledo said, her eyes narrowing. "Why are you seasoning it with bitterness?" "I was just checking the heat," Adaeze stammered, then regained her footing. "How dare you question me? I am the princess. If I want to stir the soup, I'll stir the soup." "You didn't stir it. You poisoned the joy of the meal," Oledo said. She walked to the pot, took a small spoonful and tasted it. Her face remained calm, though the bitterness was enough to make a stone cry. "What are you going to do, you poor orphan?" Adaeze taunted. "There is no more time to cook a new pot. The queen is already seated. If you serve this, you will be disgraced. If you don't serve it, you are a failure." Oledo looked at the pot, then at Adaeze. A slow smile spread across her face. A wise person doesn't throw away the pot because the water is dirty. They find a way to filter it. Oledo grabbed a bowl of honey, a bag of ground charcoal, used for neutralizing bitterness, and a specific blend of sweet alligator peppers. She walked with the speed of a weaver bird. Adaeze watched, mesmerized, as Oledo transformed the ruined stew. By the time the soup reached the table, the queen's guests were singing its praises. "This is the most complex ofe akwu I've ever tasted," one chief's wife exclaimed. "It starts with a hint of mystery and ends with a kiss of sweetness." The queen beamed at Oledo. Adaeze sat at the end of the table, fuming, forced to eat the very soup she tried to ruin. Each spoonful was a reminder that she could not outsmart the girl who had nothing but her wits. The morning of the journey of the maidens arrived with a thick silver mist that clung to the floor of the rainforest. This was a sacred trek. The maidens of Umueze were expected to walk 5 miles to the spring of purity to fetch water for the king, a tradition carried out once in a year. Adaeze looked like a tropical bird lost in a thicket. She wore her most expensive ivory anklets and a heavy silk wrapper that was entirely too long for a forest path. "Move faster," Adaeze shouted at the line of girls behind her. "You are walking like elderly tortoise. If I miss my afternoon nap because of this trek, I will have the king tax your father's yam bands." Oledo walked at the very back, carrying a large clay pot with effortless balance. "Princess," she called out, "the forest floor is not the palace floor. It is slippery from the morning dew. If you keep your head that high, you won't see the roots waiting to catch your feet." "Keep your advice in your mouth, you orphan," Adaeze snapped. "My feet are royal. They know exactly where to sleep." Adeze's foot hit a patch of moss. She fell flat on the ground, her ivory anklet clinking loudly before she slid unceremoniously into a patch of stinging nettles, an edible plant that causes stings and welts on the skin. "My skin! It's on fire!" she cried. Oledo stepped forward, plucked a specific broadleaf from a nearby shrub, and crushed it. "Apply this, princess. It is the antidote." Adaeze snatched the leaf and applied it on her skin. "I am going to find the spring myself. I don't need this slow parade." In a fit of rage, Adaeze veered off the sacred path, cutting through a dense thicket of fence. "Adaeze, wait! That is the path of the spirits," Oledo shouted, dropping her pot and running after her. The forest changed quickly. The canopy grew so thick it swallowed the sun, turning the afternoon into a bruised purple twilight. Suddenly, the ground gave away. Adaeze screamed as she tumbled down a steep, muddy embankment. She rolled through thorns, mud, and decaying leaves, finally landing at the bottom of a deep, secluded ravine. She sat up, gasping. Her beautiful silk wrapper was shredded. Her hair, usually adorned with gold pins, looked like a bird's nest after a hurricane. Her face was smeared with black swamp mud. "Papa! Guards! Someone!" she yelled, but the only reply was the mocking songs of the forest birds. For the first time in her life, Adaeze was truly alone. And for the first time, she was afraid. She looked at her hands, the hands she thought were too holy for work, and saw they were trembling. A calm voice drifted from above. "So the morning dew has finally met the earth." Adaeze looked up. Oledo was perched on a sturdy iroko tree, halfway down the slope. "Oledo, you! Get down here and carry me up," Adaeze commanded, though her voice lacked its usual bite. Oledo didn't move as usual. She sat down on the root, swinging her legs. "Carry you? My back is for water, remember? And since you are eternal and greater than the servants, surely you can simply fly out of that hole." "Please," Adeze's voice broke. A fat tear tracked a line through the mud on her cheek. "I can't get up. My ankle, it hurts, and it's getting dark." Oledo's expression softened. The fearless maid climbed down the embankment, using her toes to grip the soil. She reached the bottom and stood over the fallen princess. "I will help you," Oledo said quietly, "but not because you are a princess. I will help you because you are a human being and you are hurting. But first, you must do something you have never done." "What?" Adaeze sniffled. "You must take off those ivory anklets. They are too heavy and they are digging into your skin. You cannot climb out of a pit while holding on to the things that make you feel superior." With trembling fingers, Adaeze unclipped the heavy ivory. She handed them to Oledo, expecting her to pocket them. Instead, Oledo tucked them into her belt. "Now," Oledo said, bending her back, "lean on me. We are going to climb." The climb was difficult and exhausting. Adaeze had to grip the dirty soil. She had to break her fingernails. She had to sweat. Every time she slipped, Oledo's strong arm was there to catch her. By the time they reached the top, a heavy rain began to pour, turning the forest into a world of water. "We can't make it back to the palace tonight," Oledo shouted over the thunder. "Follow me." Oledo led the shivering Adaeze to a small dry cave beneath a limestone. She moved with the efficiency of someone who had been solving problems all her life. She gathered dry firewood from the back of the cave and started a small crackling fire. She took a small portion of roasted yams from her bag, the humble lunch of a maid, and broke it into two. She handed the larger part to Adaeze. Adaeze looked at the charred yam. A day ago, she would have thrown it at a servant's head. But today, she ate it as if her life depended on it. "Oledo," Adaeze whispered. "Yes, princess. Why didn't you leave me there?" "I was so horrible to you. I tried to ruin your life so many times." Oledo looked at the fire. "My mother once told me that a person's shadow is always black, no matter how fair their skin is. We are all the same in the dark. If I left you there, I'll be losing my own humanity just to prove you lost yours. Besides, who else will I have to argue with in the palace? The goats aren't nearly as loud as you." Adaeze let out a small shaky laugh. She looked at her muddy scratched legs. "I thought I was the sun, but the sun doesn't get cold. The sun doesn't get hungry. But I am. I am just a girl." "Exactly," Oledo said, leaning her head against the cave wall. "And being a girl is much more interesting than being a statue." That night, for the first time in 18 years, Princess Adaeze did not sleep on silk. She slept on the hard earth huddled for warmth against an offer made, and she slept more soundly than she ever had in her life. In the morning, sun broke through the cave, turning the raindrops on the leaves into sparkling diamonds. Inside the cave, Adaeze woke, not to the sound of a brass gong, but to the sound of a weaver bird. Her back ached, her hair was a chaotic mess of twigs, and her royal wrapper looked like a rag used to clean a palm oil press. But as she looked at Oledo, who was already awake and blowing the fire, Adaeze didn't feel like screaming. "The palace will be in chaos," Oledo said, helping Adaeze stand. "The king will have sent out every guard from Umueze to the Great River." "Let them wait a little longer," Adaeze said, her voice surprisingly soft. She picked up her moss-stained ivory anklet from the cave floor. She looked at them for a long moment, then handed them back to Oledo. "You carry this. I find I walk much better without the weight of things that serve no purpose but to show off." The trek back home was slow. As they emerged from the forest and entered the village outskirts, a group of women at the communal well dropped their pots in shock. "Is that the princess?" one whispered. Adaeze didn't snap. She didn't demand a bow. She simply nodded. "Good morning, mamas. The water looks very clear today." By the time they reached the palace gates, a crowd had gathered. King Azubike and the queen rushed down the stone steps, their faces etched with worry that instantly turned to bewilderment. Their daughter looked like she had rescued a crocodile and lost. Yet, she was walking side by side with a maid, sharing a laugh. "Adaeze," the king cried. What had happened? "Oledo, did you fail to protect her?" Adaeze stepped forward before Oledo could speak. "No, Papa. Oledo is the only reason I am standing here. I fell into a pit, one I dug for myself with my own pride. She could have left me there, and nobody would have blamed her. Instead, she gave me half her food and her own strength to pull me out." The queen's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Oledo. "I knew your mother's spirit lived in you. Thank you, my daughter. You have done well." That evening, the king held a feast, but it wasn't the kind Adaeze used to demand. At her request, the palace gates were thrown open to the entire village. Adaeze appeared on the balcony, but she wasn't wearing the silk gown with the thousands of cowries. She was wearing a simple, clean cotton wrapper. Beside her stood Oledo, dressed not as a servant, but in a fine cloth of her own. "People of Umueze," Adaeze's voice rang out, no longer shrill. "For too long, I thought this crown made my head better than yours. I thought my feet were too holy for the soil of this village. But the mother of the ravine doesn't care about titles, and the hunger of the night doesn't care about gold." She turned to Oledo and took her hand. "From this day forward, Oledo is not my maid. She is my advisor and my sister. And to the rest of you, if you see me acting like a lousy princess again, I give you permission to remind me of the night I spent eating roasted yam in a cave. I apologize to everyone I insulted and wronged in one way or the other. I am deeply sorry." The village square erupted. Mazi Okeke the carver cheered the loudest. Auntie Ifeoma the cook brought out a giant pot of soup that was perfectly seasoned, not with salt but with joy. As the years passed, Adaeze and Oledo became a legend in Umueze kingdom. They were known as the two hearts of Umueze. Adaeze became a queen who listened, and Oledo became a sage whose wisdom guided the kingdom through many years. Adaeze never forgot the lesson she learned in the death. She realized that a person is only a person because of other people. Her beauty didn't fade. It simply changed. It was no longer the sharp, cold beauty of a diamond, but the warm, glowing beauty of a heart fire that welcomes everyone in from the cold. And so, we learn that pride is a very tall tree that is easy for the wind to blow. But humility is the grass that bends with the breeze and stays green forever. If you are ever in Umueze, look for the statue of two women. One, a princess, one, a maid, holding a single clay pot between them. It is a reminder that no matter how high the bird flies, it must come down to the earth to find water. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to my channel. Bye!